This is really overwhelming and really quite emotional for me. We first started Black in Academia 7 years ago. Me and my sister, Paulette Williams, who's the founder and director of Leading Roots, we did the first Black in Academia in 2018 here in the British Library. And at the time, this is obviously pre-pandemic, we had so much energy and so much passion. We were so committed to creating a space where we could celebrate us. We could celebrate us, but we could also talk about some of the more challenging things about research and the academy in a safe space. Paulette had already started doing this work with younger people through a widening participation, sort of your college age years, creating a space for families and the community to learn about how to navigate university together. And when we came together, we were like, right, we need something similar. We wanted something different, something similar for graduates. Like, what was there for people that were in university still, that were thinking about a career in academia? And there wasn't anything, really. There was so little information distributed about how to navigate PhD funding, how to navigate master's applications. Like, it was both institutionally and structurally violent how much we had been left out of the conversation when it came to research and funding. And the point of Black in Academia was about how can we centre those that have made it through the system to inspire those that are coming through to be best placed to secure funding and to be able to follow their passions. And over the past 7 years, Leading Roots has gone from strength to strength to strength in and amongst a continued exclusion and marginalisation of Black scholarship. Leading Roots has been at the forefront of pushing the boundaries of making people understand that actually, if we are not including Black voices in research, then we are not producing good research. So to be here now in community with my people, with so many of you, it feels so incredible because, as many of us know, we are, again, in and amongst a lot politically, and we're still here and we're still going. And hopefully we can be still here and still going in a way that encourages us and enables us to be safe and happy and peaceful and abundant and not struggling. And I'm very sure that our speakers today and the conversation that we're going to have today is going to be very much embedded in a resistance to the struggle and more about celebrating who we are, what we do, what we contribute, and what we as individuals can offer both to ourselves, to our community, and to the world more broadly. So yeah, sorry, that's my little anecdote to start this off. And I might cry today, but it's cool, right? So I've done a little Leading Roots thing, but just to be clear, Leading Roots is a pioneer initiative that aims to prepare the next generation of Black academics. We are exploring new ways to strengthen the academic pipeline for Black students from a Black-led perspective. We aim to focus our work on gaps in the sector and look forward to welcoming more people at all stages of their academic experience or career to our growing community. So basically very much embedded in the Black parents movement, in the Black supplementary school movement. This is about how we create spaces for us in research communities to thrive. Before we get into our speakers and the beautiful conversations that we're going to have this evening, I just want to ground the space with two of my favourite key thinkers with some quotes from them. So first up, we've got Bell Hooks. To build community requires vigilant awareness of the work we must continually do to undermine all the socialisation that leads us to behave in ways that perpetuate domination. Dominating culture has tried to keep us all afraid, to make us choose safety instead of risk, sameness instead of diversity. Now, for me, what bell hooks is trying to say here, or my interpretation of bell hooks' words, is that we have to be courageous and that we have to be brave and we have to be okay with being critical yet loving friends with each other. And I think part of what makes a thriving Black scholarly community is the fact that we are heterogeneous, we are different, we come from a diverse range of experiences, lives, ethnicities, diasporas, and that is beautiful. And I think what Bell is often trying to say to us is, don't let our differences be the things that tear us apart. And I think when we're in the academy, when we're in these institutions, that is what they try to do to us. And next, the late, great Stuart Hall. And I use this quote here. I'm obviously thinking and imagining with my people this evening, but I'm also thinking of that which is out there. And I'm thinking about some of the language which is used, which doesn't directly say Black, but is talking about us as a people. And I'm thinking about how the language is changing in terms of how they're looking to exclude us. And I think it's never been more important for us to understand that change in order to reclaim what it is that we want for ourselves, and again, for us to thrive. So on this, Stuart Hall's talking about, he's using Gramsci here, who talks about hegemony, and hegemony being a political philosophy about domination through ideas. So Gramsci used to say, pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. Stuart Hall says, what he meant is, understand how the bloody system works. What confronts you? The fact that the terrain is not favourable to your project. Understand that, even if it disillusions you, even if it makes you awake at night, understand it. Then you're in a position to say, well, what was it? What can change? What are the emergent forces? Where are the cracks? Where are the contradictions? Where are the elements in the popular consciousness one could mobilise for a different political programme? Now, unintentionally, I think when we started back in academia, this is one of the things that was in mine and Paulette's minds, is that we knew that the terrain was so unfavourable, but the cracks were, we're amazing. So why don't we just get into a room and talk about how amazing we are within our research communities? We know that we're not getting funding. Like, that's the thing that's keeping us up at night. But where are the cracks? Where is the hope? The hope is in our creativity. The hope is in our staying power. In these times when the attack on Black life, through the suppression of our ideas, our creativity, and our general life is rife, it feels even more important and radical for us to be here and with each other, celebrating our success, celebrating our staying power, and being a loving yet critical community. This work is about intentionally committing to imagining, creating, and producing the most abundant, livable, and loving lives for our people. And what better way to contribute to this work now by being in community and celebrating Black women with bold stories who have redefined research narratives. Okay, let's get into it. So, first up, speaker one, my sister, my angel, my good friend, Désirée Reynolds, who is a writer, educator, curator, interviewer living in Sheffield. Her short stories are in numerous anthologies, both online and in print. Seduce, her first novel, was published by Peepal Tree, and she is creative director and founder of Dig Where You Stand, South Yorkshire, an archival justice movement. Désirée, please come and join us.
Hello, everyone. Oh, that's terrible. Hello, everyone. Hello. All right, talk like you mean it from your chest. Can I have some water, please? I'm sure I'm going to, dry up any minute. when people give me my CV, I feel a bit like, oh my God, is that me, really? Yeah. Do I do all of that? Thank you so much. And I think we just need to give a round of applause to Chantelle, don't we? And to Jamal, who's ever patient with me in my bad replying of emails, and all the people that have organised this, so thank you very much. As Chantelle said, my name is Désirée Reynolds. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. I grew up in Clapham. I know, they wouldn't let me in there now. I grew up in Clapham, did my degree in Sheffield and then stayed. As Chantelle said, I'm a writer, editor, workshop facilitator, curator. I'm a founder and director of Dig Where You Stand, South Yorkshire. I've got to kind of fess up now. I'm not actually an academic. I'm academic adjacent. Some of my best friends are no, it's all right. It's all right, you'll recover, it's all right. I'm a practitioner, that's what I am. I answered some of the questions that you very helpfully sent to just kind of get me started. So I became interested in the archives. I do archival work, memory work, and I became interested in the archives through my dad, who was a pub scholar. My brother and sister are here, and they can tell you the most excellent pub scholar. And he told me about John Archer. Does anybody know about John Archer? All right, okay, good. So can you imagine me at 11 in Clapham being told about John Archer being the first black mayor of Battersea in 1913? I didn't know why it was important to him, but it soon became important to me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the organisation that I'm running. Dig Where You Stand was named after 1970s local history and labour movement started by Swedish writer Sven Lindqvist. You've heard of him, haven't you? What? Okay. It was especially concerned with labour history, workers' rights and solidarities. He suggests that concrete workers across the globe, like workers in India and China, had more in common with concrete workers in Sweden or Hull, more than they had in common with their own bosses. It's kind of an old just follow your money movement. We've taken from his movement to create ours. One of my favourite Lindqvist quotes is, "We already know everything, we just need the courage to look." And that's how I treat the archives. We are all already in the archives. We just need the courage to look at those stories in the archives. So if Sven Lindqvist is one influence, then Saja Hartman is the other one. You all know Saja Hartman, don't you? Okay, I'm happy now. So Saja Hartman's work, all of her work, I love all of her work, but particularly her theory of critical fabulation. So we've woven these two ideas together to think about the archive and the function of the archive, the silences and the violences, and how do we, as ordinary people, engage with a thing that wants to pretend that we, as marginalised diaspora here, don't exist and won't exist and never existed. What Dig does and will always do is to continue to provide evidence of the lie. I was tasked to find in black and brown life in Sheffield City Archives. So from the get-go, I had to create my own environment in which this work could be done with these key collaborators. So language is important. One of the first things I did with these people in the archives is that I told them that we weren't allowed to say of their time. Somebody being of their time is the biggest cop-out there ever is. Especially when you're looking at history work. You can't say of anybody's time. It doesn't work. It shuts things down. It's not a useful way to phrase or frame anything. So I told them if they use that, then we wouldn't be able to do the work. Luckily, they agreed. So we continue. And as I looked at these fragments of newspapers, baptismal records, etc., I realized a couple of things. One was that the gaps contained in the archive could only, I think, be filled with art. So that's that critical fabulation, but taken a little step further. And the other thing is that the gaps could only ever be partially filled. And I think because you're all academics, I'm going to accuse you of this. I think because you're all academics, there's often a temptation to run something down to the ground and to find it grounded, facts, figures, evidence, procedures, but often in the archives, these things don't exist. So what we do at DIG, and what I suggest is something that we have to do as marginalised people, is be, in some way, kind of all right with the gaps. We have to kind of sit with it and understand it. And what we're not is we're not filling in the gaps for the voiceless. I hate that kind of talk. It's not respectful. What we're doing is we're pointing the gaps out. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. We applied to the Heritage Lottery and got £112,000. Hey. It wasn't enough. I could have spent it so much times over anyway. So with that, so myself, Alex Mason, who couldn't be here today, and Cheryl Bailey from the Sheffield City Archives, we applied for the money, we got it. We commissioned 14 artists of colour to go into the archives to find something that resonates with them, and that culminated in a city-wide, month-long exhibition, panel events, curator tools. We delivered talks, we delivered workshops. I do a workshop specifically for women of colour to go into the archives with me, and that's so oversubscribed we had to chop it in half and then repeat it. That just goes to show that the work is necessary and needed, and that women really wanted to come in and view the archives with us. I mean, it might be to do with the fact that we fed everybody afterwards. Because it's important to do communion, right? It's important to, after doing something like the archives, which, as I say, is filled with violence, we come together, we share food, we crack jokes, we have a drink, and we think about what we've just seen. So what we're trying to do is use our fragmented presence to challenge the authority of white-authored archives. We're now of a few weeks at CIC. Chantelle's helped us with that. And we are calling ourselves an archival justice movement, because I hate the words project. It's rubbish, isn't it? It's short-term, it's short-lived. Don't use the word project if you can get away with it. Initiatives, that's also ambiguous. So, you know, claim it and say it. So we are an archival justice movement. And it's one of the things that DIG is trying to redress. It's hard for some to grasp the damage, the emotional, psychological, and spiritual damage of invisibility, and that's what we're trying to do. Because when you do that, when you place a people's history in the landscape that they reside in, a new sense of being, a sense of being bodied, of well-being inevitably comes from it. And what we're talking about is kind of like an emotional inheritance. So the wholly structured absence of black women in the archive continues to be difficult, honestly. It's been the bane of trying to get this work done, but I know that I'm going to find some people soon. I found a few. I'm not going to share the stories this evening, but if you want to talk to me afterwards, I will tell you. I think some of it is very traumatic, as you can guess. So I didn't want to do this in this public arena, because, again, I'm trying to be respectful. But if anybody wants to talk to me about that, please do. So when we, also when we're thinking about funding not being available for this work, because we're thinking about community archiving, I was in Oxford, so some of you might have heard this speech before. I was in Oxford recently, and I met a really lovely, amazing person who had been just carting archives around with her from every house. She collected stuff for the Caribbean community of Oxford. Yes, there is some. And she'd gotten stories, she'd gotten audio, she'd gotten art, and she didn't know what to do with it. And I felt really passionately sorry for what's not happening in Oxford, and the Oxford archives being so rubbish at kind of thinking about what community archives can do. Anyway, they haven't paid me yet, so maybe I shouldn't say anything. Whilst academia recognises language change, and with the hope that it eventually means practice change, The impetus for that and this work in general often resides outside of the academy. We're preserving our histories in our homes, kitchen tables, communities, on a phone. Your phone's an archive, remember? That song your mum hums when she cooks, your grandfather's big toe that he makes you take off your shoes so you can show people when they come round. That actually does happen. The body too is an archive of endless information that we are trying to figure out. Knowledge built on paper can burn. Knowledge built on gathering an emotional connection to the material means it matters more, because the loss of it matters more, which means the survival of it matters more. Does anybody remember the book Liberator? Good grief, I'm old. My dad told me about the book Liberator, who would come into the British Library and steal books. He was Rasta, and he was trying to save these books from Babylon. Look him up. I feel like there's a film in there or a short story or something, isn't there? There's a book in there. People look up the book Liberator. And it's funny because we're here and this is where you try to liberate the books. Don't you try to liberate no books. We're not going to no police station with you today. As a curator of the exhibitions that we hold, I've called our method creative curation so that we can engage with the stories and the art, not just a name, a date, the description of the thing, the size, the materials. You know what happens when you go into these places. This is what you get. But what we've done is called, it's the story and the recovery. The story will be what we already see. The recovery is what is unseen, an emotional response to that invisibility. It's the value of speculating, right? We go back to Sargent Hartman. Or critically fabulating is to think very deeply about what you're not seeing and why you're not seeing it. To dig is to make known what is unknown. Very often for Black archiving, the search is not linear. One newspaper headline leads to a baptismal register, which leads to a burial, a marriage, a child at home. This is a process of reclaiming a kind of like a recovery and a reckoning with that information, and also claiming our ancestors, I think, too. As I said before, we are not impartial witnesses. We are part of the recovery. What DIG is trying to do is to contemplate and foster our connectivities. We go into the archives and make more archives, which I think is very, very vitally important. We make more archives. Navigating the internalized coloniality of museums, archives, and other knowledge institutions, and the violence that these encounters that we have is exhausting. Capitalism requires amnesia. This is a very urgent and public fight going on, in plain sight, mind you, over official memory. You feeling me? We are in a civil war about information, and I'm here to ring that alarm. We're in an archival war about access. I can't remember if they rescinded it, but does anybody remember the controversy with the National Archives saying they're going to get rid of wills? Do you remember that? Anybody? They were going to get rid of the wills of ordinary people, but keep the wills of, say, Charlie Chaplin or Winston Churchill. I wonder what's similar about them two. So national organisations are in the process of making knowledge less accessible, less inclusive, less diverse. Even though I hate that word diverse, I don't understand what it means. Diverse from rot, gets on my nerves. But less diverse. It is not enough that an exhibition is put on, a project is started, or an initiative. We have to look at the landscape in which that exhibition sits in which that work sits in. On a hot night this last August, white terror revealed itself again. Like lava, most Black and brown people understand that lava's there and regularly feel the heat, and we have to jump over to find semi-safe land. We had to shut our exhibition, make sure our volunteers were safe, keep an eye on the work. It had real world consequences. We in Britain saw the white terror up close and big and broad, and in a way that Britain has spent a massive amount of time and money and breath denying. This is the landscape in which this work is going on. Challenging populist histories is what this work is trying to do. We have to look history in the eye. Who gets to tell their own story, retrieving it, connecting to it, and bringing it out to make it visible, make visible what wasn't there before, to see the unseen. Amaka Okechukwu, I love her, argues that the black archival practice is a relationship to evidence that recognizes black humanity. Black archival lives deserve at least that, and we reclaim them. Thank you.
Désirée, man. You're just leading. You're leading it. Like, it's so inspiring. Thank you, my Sagittarian sister. Okay, we're going to keep moving because of time. I'm on it. Okay, next up we've got our film, Our Kid from the North of the South of the M1 River. So, this is an autobiographical animation film. It charts the journey of an inquisitive, mischievous child with an unconventional worldview to becoming a professor. The inspiration of the film was born from a lecture exploring autobiography in animation with the goal of inspiring more black female academics to reach professorship while staying authentic. It was a collaboration between a passionate group of staff and animation design students in the University of Greenwich, which formed Team Our Kid, meeting weekly in creative spaces to bring the vision to life. Now, the filming took place in May 2024, and the team travelled to Nottingham to capture reflections on key locations that shaped the professor's journey. So, we're doing film first, and then, yeah, we're gonna watch the film, and then I'm gonna bring up Professor Louise Owusu-Kwarteng, who is a British Ghanaian sociologist, writer, and educator based in London. She's professor in applied sociology and associate dean for student success at the University of Greenwich. Sorry, Louise, there's some things added there. Come on. These people need to, yeah. Louise's research explores black academic attainment, ethnicity, and identity. And her latest project is this animated autobiographical film, Our Kid from the North of the South of the River. Louise. Yes. The timing, that was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Really good to be here tonight, and thank you so much for all of you for coming. I've got my friends, I've got my family here, I've got lots of my colleagues, so thank you so much. So, I was just kind of like reflecting on one of the last times, well, not the last times, but one of the times when I was in here, in the British Library. It was actually in November 2010, and I was kind of finishing my PhD, and you know E.T., right? And have you seen that picture of E.T. when, she's got the wig and the hanging? That is how I felt and I looked that day. And then only to find that, when I'd finished, I'd come downstairs and then there was a tube strike. So it took me 2 hours to get back to Greenwich. So I wasn't a happy bunny. But, it's been better. It's been better since. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of an overview of what I'm going to talk about. So obviously I'll talk a little bit about my identity, who I am. We said a bit in the film. And then how this has really shaped my research and, first off, and how I started around looking at education, race and education, and how this kind of flowed into autobiography. And then, I'll talk a little bit about how I've used it a bit pedagogically, and as ways of sort of like showcasing black narratives and also our students' narratives. And then the creative collaborations, like through Our Kid from the North of the South of the M1 River, and, some other examples of things that I've done as well. So, we know. Okay, so I'm British, I'm Ghanaian, I'm from Nottingham, as you know. And, you know, I just have to say something about this, though, because, like, any time I normally say that, I mean, you know, any time I open my mouth, people will be just like, oh, do you come from Birmingham or Manchester? And I'm just thinking, hang on, wait a minute. So the map of England has only got 2 cities after... It was nice to meet somebody from Leicester today as well, so just putting that out there. So just to show, so every time this happens, I have to say to people that, well, actually, the East Midlands exist, Nottingham exists, and guess what? That's where I'm from, you know, so just putting that out there. And then in terms of age, we don't say old, we say young, okay? So, and I'm not saying anything more from there, so we'll leave that. Okay, so... where did all this begin? So we saw from my film that primary school was largely positive experience, and you know I was allowed to sort of show my creativity, you know, with my reading and my writing and stuff. So they were the things that I really enjoyed doing. I get to secondary school in 1980, and it was just a whole different experience. Okay. So first of all, I get there and I'm just like, okay, my friends have gone to another Catholic school and it's different, and it's kind of more, they've all gone there. And then I've got shipped away sort of like 6 or 7 miles from where I lived. And it was interesting because racially and also in terms of class, I didn't fit in at all. So let's just say my year group, there's 150 people, and then there was 3 of us who were black, all right? So, and then imagine the school is 1,000, so there wasn't that many of us. But in terms of class, it was predominantly sort of upper middle class kids. So, and then here's me from a working class background, so that was great. Anyway, so I had a really odd experience there because on the one hand, it's almost like, you know, they're saying, oh, well, you know, you're not very, you try hard or you work to the best of your ability, actually insinuating that they didn't think that I was all that intelligent. But yet at the same time, I'd be in the top sets for most things except for maths, which is, I'm still not very good at that now. You know, so this happened. So fast forward till 1990, when I get into the 6th form, and then I start my A-levels, and then we have to go and see this lovely careers advisor, and I'm being very sarcastic here. Anyway, so I'd heard some not so great things about what this guy had been saying, so I wasn't looking forward to having a meeting with him. Anyway, so we have this meeting, he's sitting a bit too close to me, and he just turns around and says, well, actually, I don't think you should go to university. I think you should think about working in a factory or working as an auxiliary nurse. Now, that summer, I'd worked as an auxiliary nurse in an old people's home, and I realized that this is not for me. And, you know, I'm not knocking nursing because, like, I come from a long line of nurses, but it just wasn't for me. So, naturally, I wasn't too happy and I left that 6th form. I remember walking home that day and I was thinking, how am I going to tell my dad? But my dad was on my side. So anyway, so I go to college and I do an A-level project on the experience of black students in education. And it's kind of cathartic, me doing that. It was very helpful because it helped me to work through things but understand. And when I was talking to people, they were sort of saying that they'd had similar experiences to me. So I go to university and I kind of follow that stream of the sociology of education. And then I do my dissertation on, you know, teachers' expectations. And again, hearing the same thing from black and Asian students. So I've got all this knowledge in my head and I'm just thinking, well, it can't just sit here. I've got to do something with it. I've got to help people. I've got to work with people. So in the late 90s, shall we say, okay, look, I've given it away anyway, haven't I? But yeah, so at that time, Nottingham, we were having a lot of problems with school exclusions. And it was that time when Tony Blair was coming in with his education. So I thought, okay, well, this is a helpful time for me to start working in this. And so I started working for this organisation called BUILD. So it's called Black People United in Learning Development. And here we were working with kids who were getting kicked out of school. And obviously there was a lot of black children who were getting kicked out. And the thing I liked about this place was that it had this motto, each one, teach one. So I'd been in that situation, so I could support other people. So it was really good working with there. And I was an advocate for those kids who were getting kicked out of school. And I think one of the things about that, what I'd learned, I could really see it. I could really see the way that the teachers engaged with these students. I'm not saying that some of these students weren't naughty. Some of them were, okay? But at the same time, I think it's really important to understand where it is that they're coming from, but people just didn't do this. So, you know, it was a good experience working with these and actually seeing this firsthand. And then I did my master's at Oxford Brookes. So I know you were saying about Oxford, it's a very interesting place. I lived there for 3 years, survived it. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, so I did my master's there. And again, I worked with, you know, I went back to this organization and started working with the boys who I'd been working with. And, you know, I did my dissertation project on this area. Now, at the end of 2000, I had a headache and I was broke. And I was just thinking, like, I can't do any more studying. I had my dad, I love my dad, but, like, you know, when he wants something. Anyway, he was just like, yeah, you're going to do your doctorate now. And I'm just like, Daddy, I got a headache. But, you know, it was all capped because I knew I was going to come back and do it, right? So 20 years ago, right, yeah, I've dropped it now. So anyway, 20 years ago, I came back to London to do, after living in Madrid and Nottingham and Oxford and everywhere, I came back here and I started my PhD. And initially, I was looking at sort of the identity of British Africans, but a lot of people were talking about education, and I thought, okay, this is the way that this is going. So one of the things that also came up was the fact that people were saying that their families were very, very behind them. And normally, I mean, I think with any black group, and this is one of the narratives I absolutely hated to hear, was that whether you were black, African, whether you were Caribbean, that somehow our families weren't bothered about our education, which is, I don't buy that. I absolutely don't buy that. So, and, you know, it was coming through in the research. So I, you know, shifted my PhD to looking at this. And another thing that kept coming through, I don't know if you've seen that skit by Gina Yashere, where she says that in African families, you can be one of 4 things. Doctor, lawyer, engineer, or disgrace to the family. I am a proud disgrace as a sociologist, and I will own it, yeah? Anyway. So, yeah, I ended up looking at this and looking at the role of our parents in shaping our academic outcomes and professional outcomes. And a lot of the stories were so similar to my own in that, you know, our parents were very, you know, we just didn't have any choice. Not they didn't have any choices, but, you know, they were very, very adamant about what it was that we were doing. So it became a semi-autobiographical piece. I also kind of like published based on this, again, about challenging that narrative. So this is the autobiographical element. It kind of flowed. It flowed like a beautiful river, okay? So what happened was when I was teaching, when I was doing my PhD and I was teaching, and then I got to do this module. It was called Investigating the Self in Society, but then we changed it to Self in Society. And then later on, I also got to do this, I still teach it now, called Education and Social Formation. And what we do is we get the students to understand their identities in the context of social systems or the education system. And I get the students to write reflectively on their experiences, because the thing is, we can look at these things from a top-down thing, but I'm actually understanding how the students engage with it. And out of this, we got, you know, 3 student-led conferences. You know, students talked about different elements of their identities and, you know, their experiences within that. And then some of them kind of like went on and did national conferences and then international conferences. You know, so we got some publications. So we did 3 publications out of this as well. I mean, the last one came out after just after the pandemic, after the second, or was it 3rd lockdown? God knows how many. Anyway, and then some of the students also, you know, used autobiography as part of their postgraduate studies and their undergraduate studies as well. So, you know, I was pleased to see how that's kind of expanded. But I thought, you know, me being me, I just couldn't leave it there, okay? So we got some funding to do a staff-student project, okay? Because again, just understanding student stories and like what it's like engaging in the education system, at university, how can we change, how can we sort of like align what we support, how we support our students with their experiences. So we did this project in 2023, and what it did was that it kind of like informed the faculty and the university strategies around student success, and also it got included in our access and participation plan, and also theories of change around the awarding differences. I don't like using the word gap, but that's another story for another day. Little bit of a shout out here. I mean, the work that within our sociology team that we did around autobiography got a little bit of a shout out for our TEF Gold. Just putting that out there, so yeah, sorry. Okay, anyway, so in terms of how, you know, autobiographies and storytelling can kind of like showcase our narratives, I think I just want to sort of share something that I read from Mel Green, who did some work around autoethnography. And one of the things that she said is that it's a really good way of kind of like telling untold, powerful stories. And as Black people, our stories is never told, not always told in a positive light, okay? So this is an opportunity for us to be able to use this approach in order to do it. And, you know, these stories can also shape our identities and shape our characters and histories. Now, a classic example of this, shout out to my grandma, okay, Adra Baye. Now, I tell this story a lot, but like I think if she didn't do what she did, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So my nan, again, illiterate market lady, and she made sure my mum went to school in a time and a space when girls weren't really encouraged to go to school. So I wrote an autobiography about her influence, a bit about who she was, and then how that shaped who I am as well. She was also a community midwife, so I think this is how she sort of followed. My mum and my sister became midwives as well, and my niece, I can't see her, but Ebony. Anyway, so, you know, it really shaped what she's doing and what, you know, what we all did and that. So, yeah. So shout out, Nan. Anyway, also, I'd say that autobiography, we could just sit here and write papers and papers and papers, but actually, no, we can bring it to life, okay? And we can use this interdisciplinary approach, shout out Team Orchid, because this is how we did this to sort of like enhance the story. And I think that somehow, if people see what is going on, you see, you know, the story of somebody who's gone down a particular route, you know, in my case as a Black female professor, hopefully it will inspire other people that actually you can just be authentic and, you know, do this. You don't have to try to be something that you're not. So this is what we did with sort of Orchid from the north of the south of the M1 River. So that's just, you know, that's our little, in Nottingham when we were just eating, in a very nice place. So yes, but that's Team Orchid there. But what we were doing, as I was saying, meeting every week to sort of like put together the sociological autobiography and animation in order to make this film. So, yeah, thank you. Next bit is coming, okay? So finally, I'm just going to loop right back down to my roots, my Ashanti roots, okay? So one of the things that, as Ashantis we say, is that, like, you know, you can always learn. If you don't know something, you can always learn. And one of the ways that you can do this is by storytelling. And what they say is that storytelling refreshes the mind as a shower, as bathing refreshes the body. Thank you.
Louise, everyone, come on. Sometimes when I'm in these spaces with us and I'm just beaming with excitement and happiness and hope and inspiration, I'm just like, they exclude us because we're so good. Like, we're so good. We're so good. Okay. Next speaker, Désirée Reynolds, is a professor of social sciences and associate dean for research and knowledge exchange, and the director of the Institute for Inclusive Communities and Environments at the University of Greenwich. God, Greenwich is getting some. Okay, Greenwich. Tracy's research areas focus on Black and racialised migrant families and communities. Tracy's projects involve research collaborations with neighbourhood community organisations using the creative, participatory and co-produced projects to explore migrant families' community resilience and the impact of the hostile environment policies, and to co-produce creative tools and training resources for community leadership and local action for change. Just before we give a round of applause to Tracy, I just want to say that Tracy's work has meant so much to me as an aspiring Black feminist scholar, whether it's been her theories on standpoint theory, her writing on the Black female experience over the years, Black feminism, particularly as a Black woman based here in the UK, like so often our perspectives, writing and scholarship on Black feminism doesn't get the kudos or prioritisation that it deserves. And Tracy's been doing this work for a long, long, long time. So yeah, thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you. You make me sound really old. But thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. It's a real honour. And I'm really honoured to be invited to speak at today's event. And reflecting on the theme, reclaiming Black women's narratives, I was struck by how relevant this has been to my experiences in the academy. So, growing up in a working class family of Caribbean parents, I have always understood the power of storytelling, both of my own and those of women who are my mentors, guardian, and spirit sisters who paved the way before me. This presentation centres on amplifying Black women's voices, highlighting our collective experiences in advancing social justice in our communities through creative and participatory research. My journey in the academy formally began in 1995 when I was awarded a PhD scholarship to explore Black families in Britain. But in truth, the roots of my research stretch back much further, really back to my adolescence when I first recognised the transformative power of education thanks to the influence of supportive mentors. One of the most impactful figures in my life was Miss Davis, and I don't think she actually realised how impactful she was. She was my sociology teacher in secondary school. She was the first Black teacher I'd ever encountered. It was Miss Davis who first helped me to see how we can harness our distinct experiences of growing up Black and female in Britain. Stories hold power, especially stories of Black women. We often face underrepresentation of our experiences and daily microaggression. But collective storytelling really drives and provides strength and drives us towards action. Through my research, I seek to challenge the dominant narratives that marginalise Black women and instead elevate our voices as central to shaping society. My work is embedded in Black feminist theory, which prioritises the lived experience as a site of knowledge production. And this framework has really helped me over the years to bridge theory and practice, engaging critically with structural inequalities while advocating for change. Creative and participatory methods are at the heart of my research, allowing for deeper engagement beyond traditional academic approaches. And I want to highlight the way in which these creative methods have been central to shaping my academic journey by reflecting, first of all, on my experiences as a PhD student, then talking a little bit about my academic life, and then finally looking at the research practice and projects, which I'll now call movements, which I'm currently involved in. So my PhD research focused on Black mothers in the UK, exploring how everyday life becomes act of resistance for Black mothers. In a society that often pathologizes and marginalizes our experiences, particularly Black single mothers, I sought to reclaim this narrative. Over 20 years ago, I published my first book on Black mothering, and it was one of the first in this country which looked at Black mothers in a UK experience. And really, the impetus for this book was challenging the deficit models that render our experiences invisible. From this intergenerational research project/movement, I interviewed mothers and also grandmothers and great-grandmothers ranging from 19 to 81 years old. Their stories revealed key themes around cultural heritage, resisting racialized stereotypes, and the centrality of child-rearing strategies that prepared their children to navigate racism as part of their mothering practices. This research used a life course approach, photo elicitation methods, and family objects and artifacts to really understand and explore what David Morgan calls the mundane and taken for granted aspects of everyday life. This allowed me to reveal the richness of Black mothering and Black mothers beyond the stereotypes. For too long, Black women's experiences have either been erased or defined only in opposition to whiteness. Reclaiming the narrative of Black motherhood is a political act. It affirms that Black mothers is not only about parenting, but also about community activism, resilience, and care work, what Patricia Hill Collins calls other mothering. My work seeks to move Black women from being merely subjects of research to co-creators of knowledge. So, thank you. I haven't finished. Thank you. Okay. So when I was promoted to professor in 2011, I became the 21st Black female professor in the UK. Thank you. And while I have witnessed progress, the journey remains slow and hard-won. Nicola Rolex reports Day in Power, the role of Black female professors in higher education in the UK, highlights the barriers Black women face in academia, including institutional racism, exclusion, and lack of support. These experiences are deeply familiar to me, and they fuel my commitment to equity and change. So my journey, and also the other 35 Black professors, became part of a national touring exhibition called Phenomenal Women, which sought to amplify the voices of the 35 Black female professors in the UK at the time. And this culminated in a photography exhibition and a lecture series which was recorded at London South Bank Centre. The underrepresentation of Black women in academia is not just about barriers, about numbers. It reflects entrenched biases and systematic barriers. The Phenomenal Woman exhibition and project movement spotlighted Black female professors from diverse disciplinary backgrounds working across different institutions in the UK. Yet, there was a common narrative shared of a collective experience of the higher up we progressed in these academic spaces, we were exposed to over-surveillance, tokenized, or in some cases also being villainized. We shared experiences of being subject to toxic environments, race lighting, presumed incompetence, whilst also being expected to be at the forefront of EDI initiatives. Yet despite of, or rather because of these collective experiences, many of us engage in activism both within and beyond universities, using our research as tools for social justice. Over the years, through participatory action research projects, storytelling, and creative methodological approaches, I have witnessed how sharing our narratives nurtures connections and empowers individuals to take ownership of their experiences, creating meaningful change. So I'm now going to share some examples with you of some of the projects and movements I've recently been involved in. So one of the earlier projects in which I utilised participatory action and creative methods was a project called Participatory Arts and Social Action Research with two wonderful colleagues, Umut Urel at Open University and Maggie O'Neill, who's based at Cork University. This project was funded by the ESRC. And we partnered with Praxis, a national organisation supporting migrant families, community organisations, and also secondary schools in East London to explore belonging and exclusion amongst migrant women and teenage girls. We used forum theatre, visual mapping, storytelling, and walk-in interviews. And really, this project was about empowering the women to reimagine citizenship and advocate for their rights. And this culminated with an invitation by the all-party parliamentary group on no recourse to public funding to the House of Commons to present a theatre performance. And the women and young girls also co-hosted a roundtable discussion on some of the changes that they would like to see around the policy. So we knew we couldn't really change the policy because we was in a hostile environment climate, but some of the discussions that we had with some of the MPs and politicians were around, for example, providing free school meals to children of parents who were subject to some of these migration policies which stopped them from accessing welfare services. We also secured further follow-on funding to develop a trainer-trainer project using in London and also in Sunderland. So we were working with practitioners to really think about how they can use some of these methods when working with some of the migrant women. A second initiative or movement took place with another organisation based in Greenwich, Creating Ground, which is an organisation which works to support and improve the well-being of migrant women using the arts and Citizens UK. So this initiative started during the COVID-19 pandemic and focused on how the mothers navigate the hostile environment and hostile environment policies. Through creative methods and civic engagement, we have fostered local organising and led the formation, and this has led to the formation of a group of women in a collective called Stronger Together. And this is a Migrant Women's Leadership Initiative, of which I'm very proud to be a member of. One tangible impact of this work was the Notice Us campaign, which fought for fair notice periods and Wi-Fi access in temporary accommodation. So as a result of this project and work, we were very lucky and very hard work and working with the Royal Borough of Greenwich, but we've been able to secure free Wi-Fi access in all temporary accommodation in Greenwich since July 2022. And last year, free Wi-Fi access in temporary accommodation was expanded to London Borough of Lewisham. We're also involved in ongoing work with the South East London Integrated Care Board to improve maternal health services. Through participatory theatre, the migrant mothers have, for example, highlighted how maternal health care in the UK is a game of luck, with outcomes and their health outcomes and sometimes maternal mortality often dependent on the postcodes, where they live rather than the need. So the Count Yourself Lucky project documents these experiences, and it's now being used as a training tool for midwives in South East London, so that they can better understand some of the issues and barriers and challenges that migrant women face living in temporary accommodation. So, an overriding and central theme of much of the work I've been involved in and lucky to work with amazing women over the years has been our commitment to reflect on the negative impact of the hostile environment for Black, racialised and migrant women, and the activism that emerges to actually change the situation and improve the health and well-being. So the hostile environment policy is a distinct policy which was emerged in 2012 through the then Home Secretary Theresa May, but I would argue that the hostile environment has existed for Black and migrant women for many years in this country. So for each of the projects, stories remain at the heart of this work. And so it's really about how we use creative methods to inform policy and practice. We've also, through the connecting projects, been able to co-author and write and critically reflect on lots of the initiatives that we've been involved in through a series of co-authored outputs. And it's really important to the work that we do that we share this writing. I'm coming to an end. The final project I wanted to highlight was the Let Our Legacy Continue project, which was a Caribbean Social Forum, a group which supports Caribbean older people, photographer Ingrid Pollard and David Hockham, who's a colleague of mine at the University of Greenwich, with experience in stage design. And this project is more than an archive. It is a living document honouring the contributions of Caribbean communities to UK society. So through exhibitions using family photos, artefacts and objects of family homes, storytelling workshops and community dialogues, we created a space and reflection for intergenerational learning. This project also confronts the painful history of the Windrush scandal, where Caribbean individuals who were born in the UK who were born in the Caribbean but were invited over to build back the UK following the Second World War were wrongly targeted and erased. And through this project, participants were able to not just tell their story, but it was about reclaiming their rights to belong. So as you can see, my academic journey is driven by a commitment to inclusive environment, social justice, and research that leads to real-world change. And this ethos has underpinned the work that I've been involved in setting up an institute called Institute for Inclusive Communities and Environment in the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Sciences at the University in Greenwich, where I am dedicated to building a research culture that prioritises community-driven methodologies and champions a more inclusive and just academic landscape. The participatory methods I champion do more than document Black women's experiences. They dismantle traditional power hierarchies and create shared spaces of knowledge-making. By shifting away from extractive research models, we foster collaboration that transforms policy, practice, and public discourse. So in conclusion, I hope my presentation today underscores the transformative power of participatory and creative methodologies for telling our stories, centering our voices, and documenting our lived experiences. It's also about how we can reshape the academic landscape and influence wider social change. But this work does not end with me. It is a call for action. We must continue creating spaces where Black women's stories are not only heard, but are celebrated, valued, and are embedded in the very fabric of knowledge production. Thank you. Trying to move the last one along. Sorry, I was trying to get it back. Next one. Okay. Thank you.
Wherever you want. Désirée Reynolds, everyone. What a presentation. Thank you. And now we're going to have some love, some reasonings. Hello. Oh, hello. I still feel really emotional, and even more so now because those presentations are incredible. And thank you so much. We are doing a Q&A style thing with this stylo. So I think that there's a QR code, and you guys have put questions in it, I think. But before we do that, I'm going to ask a question. So what I really loved about all of your presentations is how embedded they were in your lived experiences as Black women, navigating, surviving, thriving, and how you have lived in service to scholarship, to art, to production, to knowledge production. And I guess, and I kind of hinted at this at the beginning of this evening, in times of where the terrain feels very unfavourable towards Black women specifically, I guess it would be just great to have a few reflections from each of you on where the hope lies during this time and what kind of younger generations can do to help us, to not just survive, to just be able to be peaceful, loving, abundant, carefree, creative, but also respected as well. But I just wondered if you had any reflections on that. Désirée.
Oh, damn. Oh, my word. I always get stumped with this kind of question.
What, hope?
Yeah, because I'm a natural pessimist.
No, you're not.
So I do feel like there is an idea that somehow we don't have any hope. When I think about young people and I think about what they're doing and what they've brought to us so far and the questions they've made us ask ourselves about gender and the planet and all of that, I do feel like there is that hope there. So I do feel like that's there, but it's just how it's received by the powers that be. I think justice is easy. I think we forget that. It's actually very simple to give somebody something that hasn't got anything. That's really very simple. What isn't simple is the fact that there's a lot of structures that are invested in keeping those things away from the people that most need them. And I think young people kind of know that more than we think. They have a very good, big sense of injustice. I've got 2 kids myself. Both of them are autistic young men. And they are really on it in terms of that they correct me all the time, tell me off all the time. And I have to kind of catch myself and go, yeah, that's what am I saying now? Okay, right, fine, thanks. Because, we're being told and we're being taught and we need to be open to that. I'm not going to go on, but
thank you, Désirée. That's great.
No, I think you're right. I mean, and I think, again, sort of like, working with the younger generation as what we do, I think that really gives hope. I think it was just before Christmas, and I did a lecture with a lot of them were Generation Zs, and what goes after Z? Alpha. Yeah, the alphas, yeah. Anyway, so, no, but listening to them and just sort of like listening to the way that they saw the world. And it just really made me think that, just as a generation, anyway, X, right? Anyway, as a Generation X, in a way, we just kind of coasted through. But a lot of them are having to face a lot of things that maybe we didn't have to. And that's made them a lot more outspoken, which I really like to see. I mean, it's like what you said about them sort of like challenging us when we say things or see things in the world a certain way. And it makes you sit up. And we have to. We have to, because, we're going to leave the world. And I'm sorry to say, we won't leave it in a very nice situation. But, they'll fight. And they'll get rid of Trump.
Thank you, Louise.
We can only hope, yeah.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think what really amazes me, particularly I'm thinking about my kids, is just how they're able to think really critically and they, thinking about, they don't realise that they're sort of applying these sociological concepts and debates, but the sort of arguments that they present are really sort of nuanced, and I think that what gives me hope. And I think, the generations before have been a part of that, because we've allowed them spaces where they can actually think and challenge and not just accept the status quo. I would also say for young people, it's about finding your passion. And I think that's one of the things that struck me about the 3 papers today, was the authenticity and just something which you're passionate about, which is really important. So that sort of keeps you going when there are the challenges, and thinking about, for me personally, it's thinking the impact that my work has in the community. Participatory research is very trendy now. I remember, I've said this before, I was told it was a niche subject. So I think it's, about being authentic. That's what gives hope and keeps going. That's what I would say to the next generation of academics, is to really find your passion, and that will keep you going.
And trust your voice.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody tell you that's not what you think or not what you feel, or you're not seeing what you're seeing. Trust your own voice, I think, was a bit of advice I would give.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm slightly distracted. There's some anti-black aircon thing going on this. It's very Arctic up here. Can anything be done about that? It's very cold. Can we turn that off, please?
Blankets.
Okay, right, let's do this. I might do this slightly random. Okay. How do you keep yourself going when you're tired of all the cumulative nonsense as you have climbed the academic ladder?
That's not a question for me. I got out.
Tracy and Louise, can you give us a little, because I'm just...
Okay, so I think I sort of talked a bit about that in my talk. For me, it's really about being embedded in the community, and I work with a group we're called the Stronger Together Leaders, so that's that community activism. And I'm not the first academic who'd call themselves an activist scholar, but as I said, it just reminds you why you're doing it, so you can just, some of, you know, the things that we experience, you just have to just let it go over, wash over you, to think what is really important. So that's what's kept me going. Also finding supportive spaces as well, and colleagues that you can talk to, because it is one thing that people don't tell you. There's 3 black female professors at the University of Greenwich. I think we must be in lead now, actually. It's a very lonely experience. It's there's not very many that you see which look like you and share that experience. So it's just trying to find those supportive networks and spaces, and that's how you keep going. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
I mean, I would agree with that 100%. But also, I think for me, sometimes it's hard, but I just try to find humour in things.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. It's the delivery.
Yeah, I mean, I feel sorry for the people that know me, because I always have some sort of analogy to find things. But otherwise, you know, like, if something is really upsetting, yes, it would upset me for a while, but I'm just like, okay, well, I need to try and find some humour out of this. So, yeah.
Good, thank you. There was a question that's gone that I want, that it was about the racial gap, and who's on the questions? No, I know, but it keeps like rolling and I keep missing. So there's 18. There was a question that I think is an important one to ask, and it was about how do we close the racial gap in relation to light-skinned people, women being, I don't know if it was, oh no, here we go, yeah. When looking at popular media, the representation of black women tends to be skewed towards light-skinned or biracial individuals. How do we tackle the racial gap?
How long have we got?
I want to apologise for asking such a tough question. I'm really sorry.
No, it's a good one. It's important.
It's all right. It is important. I mean, the first thing is seeing that that this is the problem. You know, I think this is the first thing. I mean, it's still there, but I'm just thinking of like how it was a few years ago. We're just seeing more different people, you know, like darker skinned women on it. But I still think we need to see more, and I also still think that, you know, that we're always cast in particular roles. So it's about kind of like diversifying the roles, not just about this, you know, not just in a certain way. So I think we need to just diversify roles that kind of reflect our real life experiences. But then you'll get some people in the media just kind of like saying, oh, there's too many black people, when they go mad when they see too many black people on the Sainsbury's advert, don't they? So, you know, that isn't going to help matters. But, yeah.
It's a tough question. They do go mad. That was so funny. It is very true. So I think I find this difficult because when we're thinking about popular media, what are we actually talking about? I think we have to define what popular media means. Has anybody watched that series, that guy, what's it, something Whilst Black, and he... Dreaming Whilst Black, and that was a YouTube series, wasn't it? And he developed that himself, didn't he? So I'm just thinking that when we think about media, that we have to reclaim our own stories for our own selves and put stuff out there that's not reliant on necessarily the right adequate funding, and funding our own media, if you like. I think that's one way, hard way, but still one way of trying to tackle this racial gap. And also to remember that advertising isn't real life. A lot of this is driven by cornflakes and car insurance, and, you know, and at some point, as we know, we fall out of favour, don't we? You know, it's cyclical. So, and in that process, in that downtime when we're not in favour, that's where the real work happens.
Yeah. I just want to say as well, as a light-skinned black mixed race woman, for anyone that looks like me and takes up space, a really great book by Noel Ignatieff, How the Irish Became White, I think has really good lessons in it for light-skinned people, particularly thinking about becoming race traitors. And by that, what he's talking about is understand what your position is in the system, talk about it, call it out, and do what you can to uplift those that do not get the space. And I don't mean uplift, but support that you get. And I think it's a really important and political project you have to be really committed to. And it's a constant push and pull. But it's about supporting our sisters. And yeah, it's really, really important. So thank you for asking that question. It's important to ask difficult ones. Oh, this is a good one. How do you navigate marking criteria that does not allow for epistemic disobedience whilst aiming for a good grade using non-traditional methodologies? Love that. Get rid of exams. Get rid of coursework. Sorry, I shouldn't really say that, but I do think that.
I don't actually understand the question, sorry.
I think what the person is asking is that the academy and the way we measure value is very much skewed towards Western and traditional modes of knowledge production that are neurotypical, white, colonial.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was just thinking, probably not going to answer the question, but I was thinking that's one of the values and benefits of the sort of creative and participatory methods, is that it allows us to sort of think about other ways that knowledge gets created and also gets privileged. I think there is work which is happening around sort of decolonising sort of methodologies and practices and recognising there are these other sorts of methods of assessing which sort of move beyond the sort of conventional sort of metrics which are used as well. So I think, again, this is another call to action in terms of what we can do to encourage our institutions to really encourage and celebrate some more of those approaches. I don't like the word non-traditional because I know that's used a lot, but I was just thinking, particularly if you look outside of the global north countries, a lot of those methods, which decolonising methods and even creative and participatory methods have been used for a very, very long time in many of those societies, but it's not been really recognised. So I haven't really answered the question, but I think what we're doing here today and recognising the power and the value and introducing that into sort of curriculum design as well. And I think that's all helpful.
Just quick, how are we doing for time? Okay, good, cool. I'm going to ask another question. Is that okay, guys? Yeah. There was a question about work-life balance, and it was like, how do you balance your activism, scholarship, and life?
We don't.
We need to, though. So
very important.
It's very important.
Self-care is very, very important. And yeah, I think, it's important to find that balance. And, I think, I know for me, I can only speak for myself, having children has been, I've had to, I can't work all the hours. I have to cut off at a certain time, I have to, dinner needs to be done and I have to spend time with them and so forth. So you automatically find that balance in life. But even the sort of the community work that I do, I enjoy what I do. So I see that as, yes, it's work, but it's a way for me to sort of disconnect. I'd say self-care. I can say that I've known, which I didn't talk about today, but in terms of that black female professor route, unfortunately, I've known many who get very ill, and I'm sure we all do, who, have died prematurely. That cancers are really prevalent amongst black female professors and mental health. So I think we owe it to ourselves to make sure that we are balancing work and, and looking after ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I joke, but I mean, I always try to make sure that I just on a Saturday or a Sunday, like, do my Zumba class, or, you know, go for a walk, or read a novel. I'm very proud of myself. I've got through 10 novels so far this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, you know, just make sure I read, or just go and have a coffee somewhere, or just catch up with my friends. But I always just try to make sure, because otherwise, I think when you, like, one thing I found before was I used to work all the way through the weekend, and I found that by the time I got to Monday, I was grumpy and I was tired and that. So I just thought, I can't do my job properly, and I can't be okay in myself if I don't have this time out. So I just tried to do that. So, yeah.
I'll say that I'll agree with my fellow panelists. Everything that you've all said is brilliant and exactly what I do, except for Zumba. I don't have the knees for it anymore. But one of the words that I think really, really works against that question is the word resilience. I think it's applied to black women so often, and we're kind of not allowed to be tired or fed up, or I just can't do it, you know, or I just need an Earl Grey, or, you know, like, we're not allowed to be tired, we're not allowed to be exhausted, we're not allowed to be burnt out. And I think all those things, as you know, we've all probably experienced all of that, haven't we? So to know that you're tired is actually quite a big deal. And we don't even acknowledge that we're tired or that things are making, we just keep going. And I sometimes think resilience applied to us has just not done us any favors whatsoever. We're allowed to need some rest, and I do like that. I think I mentioned it in that talk I gave in Oxford, was that rest is resilience, or rest is, she's good, isn't she?
Just related to that is the strong black woman. Like, sometimes I don't want to be strong, I want to be weak. I want to be soft. I want to sleep, you know. So, but it's meant as it's meant as something to celebrate, but actually it can debilitate, because then we feel that we have to keep going, we have to be strong, we have to be resilient, and
what you were saying about being ill as well is, I think that's one of the things that really scares me, actually, because I have been ill before, and then, you know, when I started my PhD, and that was actually quite terrifying. And, you know, as somebody who has autoimmune issues as well, so this is another thing that I have to be really, really mindful of. So, you know.
Yeah. I think legacy is important with those things. Sorry.
No, go on.
Are you here?
We're here.
Is that legacy is important. So everything that I try to do, I try to build in that I'm not going to be here all the time. Right? And sometimes some of us, and you know who you are, you hang on to too much things for too long. Right? Let it go. We have to be able to build in that we're not going to be there all the time, whether it's career change, whether it's illness, whether it's moving, whether it's leaving the academy or going somewhere else. We have to build that in from the start of any movement or initiative that we do. Is actually, I may not be here, so that we train up some people, which is what we're doing with DIG, is we work with younger people, we work with schools, we work with colleges, because we know that we can't be there all the time. And if we don't build that in, often I find that we, especially in community spaces, there's a one-woman band who's doing everything, and she's not well, and she can't complete it. As I said, I met an amazing woman in Oxford, and I think that it's, you know, if we don't build in legacy, then we're doomed to repeat the same things.
It's a good, excellent point.
Yeah. Thank you. There was another question, and it's gone, but I'm going to try and paraphrase it. It was about, someone was saying, how do you deal with internalized misogyny in the workplace? No, it's a good one, man. Like, patriarchy has no gender. Like,
Anyway.
Call Louise.
Well, because the reason why I'm looking at you see, look at that, she's gone, yeah, you do it. But I don't work in that environment anymore, because I run my own thing. So I'm not in that position to have to think about that kind of thing. Go on, tell me, what is it?
Cultural traditions and internalised misogyny have been my biggest obstacle to thrive as a black woman at work. especially corporate. How do we navigate that? Exclamation mark, question mark.
Leave.
Yeah, it's good, yeah, leave.
Start your own thing.
Yeah.
They don't deserve you. They don't see you as a person. Start your own thing. We're all here to support you.
Yeah.
You know, it is a very, very hard ask. And I wouldn't know the first thing about navigating a corporate space. I met somebody who told me about Meghan Markle, and I can't stand Meghan Markle either, right? Well, I'm not a royalist, and she's forcing me to have to defend royalists, isn't it? I don't want to do it, but I understand what she's faced. Anyway, let's get on with it. But she was telling me that she works at Channel 4, and she's having these huge, massive conversations about Meghan Markle every day. And I thought, who does that? But it's the corporate world has forced it upon her, and I didn't know how to help her except buy lots of cake and listen to what she had to say. But it is a forcing of an identity, isn't it, that you then have to kind of navigate in that corporate, also institutional world. How do you do it? I'm just asking the same question.
It is hard. And I think, I mean, knowing that it's there, I mean, I've worked in sort of corporate places before, and I think when I was younger, you know there's something wrong, but you can't quite put your fingers on it.
Yeah.
So I think as you get older, you see it. Sometimes, and it's hard, it's really, really, really hard, but sometimes you have to sort of call it out, and it's impossible, and it's how you do it, and, you know, you have to try to, you just have to try to call it out. I mean, and sometimes I'm not very good at just kind of, you know, sugarcoating things. Sometimes I'm not, you know, but then sometimes, you know, you have to say, look, you know, this isn't the way to be doing things, you know, but sometimes.
Yeah, I was thinking hard about that question, because I was thinking, actually, I'm not sure how I deal with it, but one of the things, I recognise it, so when I recognise it, I can see what it is, and I can. It's almost like I have an internal conversation with myself to say, actually, this is not about me, it's about them, and in a way that creates a bit of a buffer for me. But yeah, I was just thinking, how do I deal with it? It's hard. I mean, there's internalised, sometimes it's implied, sometimes it's explicit. I mean, it's a constant, it is a constant daily, you know, it's almost like you arm yourself when you go into work thinking, okay, what am I going to be facing today? How do I sort of navigate around? And it is about navigating around it while also trying to protect my mental health and well-being. But I think it's that recognising it and just being able to, it's almost like I bounced it back. It's like I rebuke you. You take that back. That's, you know, that's your shit. You deal with it. That's nothing to do with me.
Burn some
but
sage.
It's not easy. It's not. I'm not going to lie. It is not easy. And having your friends, you can sit and you laugh. You talked about the kitchen table talk, and that's the point I was talking about. The individual stories become collective stories, so you can take strength. You know it's not just about you. You know that there's many others, and, you know, I'm sure there's many others in the room who will have those same experiences. And so that gives you a kind of strength to know that, okay, I can sort of, cope, or I would say just navigate around it. It's there, though, yeah.
But sometimes, though, it does get a bit too much, though.
Yeah.
You know, it does get a bit
It
too
does.
much.
Yeah.
Especially when it's from women.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, it's a misogyny, but then there's also it's layered with the race, so that's what I was talking about. So there's a perception of, you know, maybe that you're incompetent, or there's the surveillance or the micromanagement. There's all these things which are happening, and you're thinking, what's the intersections of race and gender?
Yeah.
And you see that it doesn't happen to other people, and you're thinking, okay, what's going on here? But then I said it's that conversation where actually this is nothing to do with me, this is to do with you and your perception of me. That's not my business. You know, what you think of me is not my business. And I say that to my children as well, because people are going to have opinions about you, good or bad, and you just can't take it on. Yeah.
I mean, I remember having it was a few months ago, I had an incident, shall we say, and someone was trying to sort of, like, you know, defend Andrew Tate.
Oh my word.
And I was just like, you know, And you know when you have to, like you're saying, you have to sort of like step back and just like, again, it's not about you, it's not about, it's about them. And then you try and reason, and then in the end it's just like, mate, you see what this guy's doing?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's almost like, I think also with that, unfortunately, sometimes, even though you know it's happening and you try to navigate it, but sometimes there's nothing you can do about it as well. So I think it's understanding that as well. But
Thank you so much, and thank you for answering that very difficult question to end on. We are actually going to have to wrap now. I've obviously gone over time because I'm terrible with time management. I'm sorry, team. But we do have canapes and drinks now. We can be together and talk. Can you just give a round of applause to our panellists again?